Welcome to the FAST Podcast, your go-to source for financial advisor strategy talks. Hosted by Lara Galloway, Senior Vice President of Channel Management at White Glove. Tune in as we uncover valuable insights from industry experts, offering you actionable tips to elevate your business.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us on the FAST Podcast. With me today is a fabulous podcast host himself, Mr. Johnny Sandquist from 3 Crowns Marketing. And I'm so excited to have Johnny here today. We're going to talk a lot about branding and marketing for advisors, but let me just give you a little background on Johnny first. So Johnny went from being a newspaper editor to a high school English teacher to finally finding his fit as a content writer at Orion Advisor Services. And then he moved on to become content director at Mineral Interactive, which is a marketing agency for advisors. All of this before he decided to start 3 Crowns Marketing in 2018. And as the CEO at 3 Crowns, he leads the overall strategic direction for his clients, but most importantly, he hires the best and brightest team members to bring those ideas to life. I love that. Johnny was born and raised in Omaha and loves his life there with his wife, his 3 kids, and a dog. And when he's not working, you'll find him writing poetry, playing guitar, and planning his family's next outdoor adventure. So, Johnny, you're so cool. Welcome to the FAST Podcast.
Lara, thank you so much. That's such a nice intro.
Well,
Makes me sound cooler than I am.
Well, okay. So to pivot off of that, I must be cool too, because you and I have so much in common, and we've talked about this a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I was a newspaper editor. I worked at my town newspaper in Augusta for a few years before I went off to college, and then I was the freelance editor for my grad school paper. I was always going to be an English teacher. That's what my graduate degree was supposed to be, but I wound up doing comparative literature and teaching Spanish instead. So that's super close. And we've also talked before about our mutual love for everything outdoors and being super active with our families. So yeah, we have
absolutely.
A lot in common.
I'm a national parks aficionado.
I know.
Yes.
Me too, man. I think it's so nice. I see all this stuff that I want to geek out on and buy, like the water bottles where you put the little stamp on all the different states you've been to, all the different parks.
Oh yes. Yes. Yeah. So actually, before we get into the marketing talk, my family collects junior ranger badges because all of our kids are 12, 9, 7. And so every park we go to, we get to collect a ranger badge. That's our thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
We used to have the little passport that they used to get stamped all the time, but mine are a little older now, so they're kind of out of that, but it's fun. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, the national parks do a pretty good job with their branding these days, I have to say. I hope you approve.
They do.
I really have been impressed. I think they've stepped up their marketing. They've gotten current, so.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I follow multiple parks on Instagram because they're very good at what they do. It's a great example of good branding.
Very good branding. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So you are a marketing and branding expert, and you've been working in the advisor space for so long. So tell me what are you seeing and what do you talk to your clients about when they're looking for some help with some good ideas for branding?
Such a good question, because we are like literally in the middle of a couple branding projects right now. So this is what I'm waking up and falling asleep to the thought of currently.
Yep.
So I think I'll start with this. Brand, a lot of people, a lot of advisors think of brand just as like the logo, the visual identity. And brand is so much more, right? Ultimately, brand is deciding who you are and what you want to communicate about yourself. And that can be done both through the messaging and the visual identity that you choose. But then ultimately, once you set that brand, then it's up to the audience that it goes out to kind of receive that and ultimately create what your brand means. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of a dialogue that happens when you want to create a good brand. But I think the starting points that I would go with is to look outside financial services. If you are looking at a brand refresh, especially from a visual identity standpoint, don't look at what other firms are doing. Look outside the industry to get better creative inspiration.
Great. Yeah.
That is
like
typically
the national parks. Maybe look at those, right?
Absolutely. Think of how many advisory firms use mountains and horizons and things like that in their branding. I mean, you can get a much more distinct creative palette if you go look at what the Parks Foundation is doing than if you just went over and looked at what's Peak Advisors in my town up to. So yeah, that's really where we start. a lot of times we'll look at like luxe fashion brands and things like that for inspiration, especially if it's more of like a high class, sophisticated type of brand that we're building.
Yeah.
But I'd say look outside the industry, and especially brand needs to be distinct. So you don't want to over index on looking at what other people are doing, but you do want to have an awareness of like, what's a couple other firms in my town? How are they talking about their services? Because you want to make sure that the ideas that you've come up with about what makes you different are actually different. You have to be saying something different to attract attention.
Okay. So should I use the terms holistic and fiduciary in my branding? Because that makes me different, right?
No, actually makes you the same as like 99% of firms. I am fascinated by how the industry has just like latched on to this idea of fiduciary. And I guarantee you, if I was not steeped in the advisory world, I would have never heard that word in my life.
Absolutely not. So absolutely not. Yeah.
If I was a marketing agency owner and I was just working with, random small to mid-sized businesses, not in financial services, and I'm like, oh man, it's time for me to work with an advisor. And I went to an advisor's website who's just like, can't stop talking about how they're fiduciary. I would be like, sounds great.
Yeah.
Not real sure what this has to do with me. So
that's
your messaging has to be, it has to be outward facing. Focusing on who you are is not the ticket, right? It's about who am I talking to and what do they need? They might need a fiduciary, but they're going to be thinking of that in very different sort of pain points. They don't wake up in the morning and think, I need a fiduciary advisor. They think like, I need an advisor who like actually listens to me and like cares about these things that I care about. Like very simple language.
Yeah. And that I can trust, right? Like part of the reason I think advisors are attracted to saying, oh, I'm a fiduciary. It's like, I'm somebody you can trust, right? I'm using this as a prop to let you know that I am bound to do what's best for you, not what I get the most commission on. And that's a really important statement to say. I think it's maybe already been said 1,000 different ways, and that now it's just an expectation. And, certainly holding yourself to that standard is important. But just when it comes to branding, like you were saying, like it's that two-way conversation. Is that the language that your clients would use to talk about you or to talk about their needs? No, then don't use it, right?
Yeah. And ultimately, the people who come to you, they're really concerned about their own lives, right? Yeah. And so they're going to be concerned about talking about the very specific situations, the events that brought them to you. And that's a good part of your story to tell, but it's a part of the story. It's not the number one differentiator.
Yeah. So I love what you said, like the idea of, to take on branding in 2024, look outside your industry, get some inspiration from luxe brands or, national parks or fashion industry, whatever it is, but find something that, kind of resonates and looks like it would fit your target audience. What else do you need to do in terms of branding and marketing to stand out and capture today's consumers and investors?
Well, I think that advisors have to start to get comfortable with new forms of media. I'm thinking of an old brand, I think of a website that doesn't really offer very many good opportunities to connect with a firm other than like a contact page, or if I'm thinking of a firm's social media that's not very modern, it's just a bunch of text posts, links to blogs, things like that. So if you want to have a modern brand and a modern marketing approach, I think you really need to dive into interactive website that is very focused on driving people to connect with you, to build community, build engagement, give away information for free. But once you've got that information that somebody's taken hold of, a really robust digital communication strategy so that you can continue to nurture that relationship. So make sure the website's very lead gen focused, which not many websites truly are. And
most of them, like in comparison, would you say like most of them are like brochures still, right?
Very much like brochures. Yeah. And we have moved so far past the world of the website being the online brochure. Website's the bedrock of everything you do. And it's got to not just explain what you do. It's got to convince people that you're the right choice for what they need. So you really have to go to that next level and intentionally build your website as a funnel that's driving people toward a decision point. And then the other side of things where I really see media as a whole going is much more towards video content. I think written content blogging is still very much 1A, but video for me is 1B. And we see that across generations, across media channels. I think now's the time to start latching onto these trends.
And are you saying that video marketing should be a huge part of your website or of your branding in general, like video marketing on social?
Yeah, all the above. I definitely think that, going back to what we're talking about, trust building was one of the best ways to build trust in a marketing channel type of format. It's to use video so people can see your face, they can hear your voice, they can begin to have this very human reaction to like attach emotion, a reaction to who you are that they're not going to get through just words on a page or even just a photo of you. So I think it's important to leverage video in multiple formats on your site. I also think it should be a foundational pillar of the content being created for the same reasons. I don't want to talk about like social algorithms, partially because I can't say the word right. But they do they love video too. So it's also a smart move from just trying to increase your organic reach.
Yeah, I think, I've seen some great websites that from some advisors that they've done where there's like a welcome message or just something talking about the team or just even some moving pieces. It's not like a produced like, hello, here's a webinar about whatever financial topic, which webinars I think on websites are great too, kind of living there and being evergreen and helpful. But I've seen some really cool things where it's just like some moving images of, the people in the office and just kind of giving you a feel for what things look like. And it's just so smart. It feels much warmer, even just from a website. Yeah,
absolutely.
So now, like, I feel like if we're going to talk about marketing, we have to talk about AI because there's no way to avoid it. And I think there's just so many cool things happening right now with AI, both for just general users like me. I mean, I'm using it to help me all the time with coming up with some ideas for things I want to write or presentations I want to do or ways to approach things. And I'm also using it to learn just history or something. I don't know. I was watching Oppenheimer the other day for the first time, and I'm studying up on a bunch of things I didn't know. So it was great. But from you,
that's cool.
It's so cool. From you and your perspective and what you're talking to your advisors about with their marketing, how does AI fit into all this? Like how are you positioning what AI can do with content or SEO or whatever else? How are you talking to your advisors about that these days?
I am so fascinated by AI and its capabilities. It is so early on, and it's already so early on, I guess, in our conception of AI, like as a software tool, even though it's kind of been baked into things for a long time. So early on, and can do so many cool things like seemingly overnight, and it's going to get so much better. I think AI is incredibly important as an assistive tool in, like you said, research, in trimming down the time it takes to create content. I don't believe in it right now as a content creation tool itself, at least not without a heavy human hand as part of it. So there's a few things behind that. So, and I've had this conversation multiple times over the last couple of months with advisors. A couple of advisors telling me that they just, have ChatGPT write a blog for them, and there it is. That's what they're using as their blog. And they're like, but my traffic's not going up, even though I'm publishing a lot more. And that's kind of been the case before, right? With human written blogs too, in some cases. But I don't know if you ever listened to this podcast called Marketing School. It's one of my faves.
No.
It's Neil Patel is the host, and it's like a daily 10-minute podcast. They did a little study on a couple brands that went all in on AI content. And over like a 6 months period, they just said, we're going to have AI write our content, tiny bit of human editing, but we're just going to publish they went crazy. Like these brands they looked at published thousands of blogs a month, and in a bet that just by sheer volume, their SEO would skyrocket. And instead, both of these websites traffic tanked. It
Really?
They went down by 20 and 38% over this time period as they were publishing more. So the opposite of what their thesis was happened. And essentially it's because it's just not good. Google doesn't look for keyword packed articles anymore. Google looks for things like user intent and user experience. So when you're trying to improve your SEO, it's not just about getting somebody to click on a blog when it comes up in a search result. They need to stay on your website and read the article. There's so many things that influence good content and good SEO. And AI written content just doesn't have the base yet that a human person would in knowing the depth of what content needs and just making sure it's being specific to something that a human user would want to read. But where AI shines is on things like giving you starter ideas. Hey, I tried this out before we hopped on this call. I pulled up Bard, Google's AI, and I said, hey, read the 3 Crown site and write me a 10-question FAQ page for it.
Nice.
And it did.
Nice.
And it wasn't very good. But it gave me if I wanted an FAQ page, it gave me some of the starters of what I could have for it. And then I put in some new prompts and I was hey, have this be written from a first person personal approach instead of third person. And the Thames was much better than the first. So a lot of AI is knowing good prompts, but using it as Kickstarters, using it for AI video editing tools can be really good right now. So there's definitely some good application uses where I think definitely the marketing team of advisory firms would want to dive heavy into it.
Yeah. You made some really great points. And I am surprised to hear that about the study, because you would think, historically, we've learned that more frequently updated content on websites like blogs and whatever, that was what Google was looking for. That's what pleased the algorithm gods or whatever. And so we were telling our clients to be more present and produce more. But those things just keep changing. And it is surprising to think that that computer generated, generative AI couldn't meet that model very, very well where it's at. And maybe it can soon. But I think the piece that you said there that I thought was really helpful was, it's all about us learning how to prompt it better. And the better we become at prompting and at refining, the better it can be. But I do think it's great for doing a lot of the initial heavy lifting. I kind of, for me, it's the blank page versus ChatGPT. ChatGPT for the win, right? Because just getting words on the page is so hard sometimes. And if I could just get something that I then edit, now I'm good to go. I got it,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And, so much too, on the marketing side, we talk about, advisors using this for blogging and things like that. But I mean, man, you can use it for such simple stuff it's something as simple as writing a holiday card for clients, or helping you with grammar of an email.
Yeah.
There's advisors can use this in so many applications, not just about marketing content.
Right. No, that's really good. So then let's talk a little bit about some other ways that you can do marketing. I mean, a lot of what we've talked about so far, marketing, branding, getting content out there, video marketing, is kind of everything an advisor can do and is in their control, right? These are the things you should be doing. You should be producing good content. You should be, warming up your website and your socials with some video marketing and things like that. But what about the kind of marketing that other people do on behalf of you, right? So influencer marketing and testimonials, right? I know, one of our partners, Wealth Tender, is, getting these new SEC approved testimonials on sites, on Find Advisor sites and stuff. And that's really new for our industry. People were not allowed to have someone give a recommendation. And I think that's important now. So how do you work with your clients on that to kind of incorporate what other people are saying about you instead of just you talking about yourself all the time?
So I'm glad you said Wealth Tender. First of all, big shout out to Brian Thorpe.
Yep.
because I love what they're about. And tiny plug for us, our websites are integrated with them. So one way is to just take your testimonials from Wealth Tender and just very easily code them into your site so that those are a prominent piece of the user experience when somebody visits your site. So I think, man, influencer marketing and testimonials and everything is such a fascinating realm to me because advisors seem so scared of it. And I'm not a compliance person, but it doesn't seem that tough as long as you just put the right disclosures on.
Yeah.
Like the SEC has handed out fines, and all of them were literally just because they're like, hey, you did this without disclosures. It's not that crazy. It's not like they went out and were like, the testimonials you were using were grandiose and making these promises and all that. It's just like you just didn't use the right disclosures. And it's very clear about how to write those disclosures. It's like, are they a client or not? Did you pay them or not? Like what other relationship needs to be said? Yeah. But social proof is so incredibly important. I think it's especially important as the generations keep getting older. I say that as an elder millennial. Social proof is super important for my generation.
Yeah.
I was just on a panel talking about this, and I can't remember the exact stat now, of course, but millennials are incredibly invested in looking at social proof before they make decisions. So they want to read reviews and see what other people are saying, see other people's experiences. Gen X is a little bit less so, but it's definitely something that I think is just, it helps because suddenly you're not the one saying, oh, I'm great. It's somebody else with a real experience saying, yeah, this was helpful for me. And there's a lot of trust. Again, we keep coming back to the word trust. Like good marketing builds trust. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And so I think it's one of the most effective ways to very easily build trust in your marketing is to leverage client testimonials.
And so are you having your clients, are you helping them, like you mentioned, integrate that onto their website? Is that what you do? Is that something you recommend, or is it that you just have them, getting these recommendations on Google or out on find an advisor sites or on their socials? Like how do you ask them to leverage that?
Yes. So I think it's a little bit of, it's a little bit different. We're a little bit agnostic to a lot of these things. So it's like if somebody is with Wealth Tender or they want to make it easy for themselves, then I would say like go sign up for that. If they're using something else or don't need that for whatever reason, then yeah, Google reviews is a good spot because that's public and everybody can see that even apart from you. It'll help with your local Google business rankings, things like that. I think the one thing to keep in mind, as I understand it, is just if you ask clients for reviews, you literally have to ask every single client. Like you can't cherry pick. And so what I recommend to advisors is if you're not doing an NPS type of survey, or it doesn't have to be full NPS, just some kind of like annual client survey where you ask them like, hey, how are we doing? Like that's such a crazy, scary question for many business owners to ask because they're a little bit afraid that they might get some bad feedback.
Right.
But you want the bad feedback if it's there. You don't want it to be a mystery. You don't want that client to leave you because you haven't been talking to one enough. Like weasel it out now. So I'd say, yeah, set up an annual survey. It can be just a few quick questions, get feedback. How are we doing? Send it to every single person. You can link them over to Google reviews if you prefer. You can just collect it internally. And then from that point, then it's easy just to put some of those out and link to the full set of reviews. That's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah. And I got to believe that having some sort of testimonials and reviews on your website is going to, again, build that trust, build that credibility, much more so than you just talking about yourself and what you do for your clients. Like having that sort of clients talking back element, I think is such an important part. So love that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
What other, do you have any other suggestions for some best practices as we go forward into this new year for advisor websites in general?
Okay, this is going to be a silly first one, but update the copyright year on the bottom of your website in the footer. Everybody always forgets that. Sometimes I'll come across a website and the copy will be like copyright 2021. I'm like, no. update that to this year. It's just a nice little thing.
Oh.
I actually, on that note, if we want to talk about very simple SEO hacks that people can do, if you've got evergreen blog content on your website right now, evergreen meaning it's still applicable no matter what year it is, just go back to that blog and edit it and put into, the headline, the title, the blog description, the current year, and then update that blog. Don't republish it to this date, but just resave it so that that's in there now. And then that'll cause it to be re-indexed. And oftentimes there's a very simple way to get a little traffic boost if you just insert the current year.
So you're not republishing it at the current date. You're just editing it. Basically, you're editing the original blog post, adding that and hitting save. And now you've got the new year popping up in that content. It's going to get re-indexed. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Love it.
Exactly.
So easy.
Exactly. So if you wrote a blog last year in June, estate planning tips for entrepreneurs, go back to that and just make the title estate planning tips for entrepreneurs in 2024 and just save that blog. And it's a very simple way. Often see a little boost in traffic from that. So
love that.
Those are two quick, easy things to do. And
wow, that was great that we celebrated with I love that.
I don't know if you're on a Mac, but the new Mac OS has animations when you do certain hand signs and videos, and I keep forgetting to turn it off. So I am throwing up like fireworks and balloons in every professional meeting I'm in now.
I love it.
So
I love it. It's so
people, hopefully you can use that clip so people actually know what's happening.
Yes.
But so those are two easy things. And then the last thing I'd say, best practices for your website is make sure you make it incredibly clear in the first 3 seconds when someone lands on your site who you help and how they stand to benefit. I'm not even going to necessarily say what you do. I think what you do is important, but it's way more important to say hey, we help parents with small kids figure out how they're going to fund retirement while also sending their kids to college, than it is to be long-winded and say we use tax planning and 529 account
and we're
strategies
fiduciary
to help these parents do all this stuff, and we're fiduciary. So look at the very top of your website. Make sure you are saying something about a specific group and how they stand to benefit from working with you at a high level, but be specific as you can. And then on the top of that site, give them a very specific action to take so that if somebody does come to your site, they've been referred or whatever, and they're ready to take that action, have that button there that says, schedule your first meeting or get our book that we just wrote. Whatever you decide is that first action you want someone to take is, make sure it is right there, because I still see so many websites where they're just hiding how to contact you.
Yeah.
And it's just a little mail button somewhere in the corner. And I'm guys, this ain't it. So make it easy to be reachable.
Yeah. You are not some giant corporation that does not want to be contacted. You want people to contact you. So use that super valuable real estate at the top of your website for that call to action.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dang, you gave so many good tips. I really appreciate this. And, I just want to give a plug for you. We love 3 Crowns. We love sending our advisors who are looking for branding, website updates, just how to figure out all this marketing stuff, who really want to invest in that. So when you're coming to our workshops, people are going to vet you. They're going to look at you. They're going to decide, do they want to do business with you? And part of that decision is going to be made on the brand that they find when they go look at your website. So if it ain't up to snuff, talk to Johnny and 3 Crowns, and we'll post in the show notes how they can reach out to you. So, hey, Johnny, before I let you go, I always like to ask a little bit about a definition of success. And so I would love to hear from you. How do you define success for yourself?
Oh, we're going to get all existential here at the end of this podcast.
Yes. Yes,
Holy
we are.
Cow, Lara. It's too early in the year for this. No, I'm just kidding. Success to me, honestly, mostly revolves around my family and the freedom to be there when my kids or my wife need me. So this is a question that I spend a lot of time thinking about, journaling about, especially as a small business owner, because it's very, very easy to get lost purely in the numbers and say like, okay, well, our revenue in 2022 was this, and then it was this in 2023, and now we want it to be this in 2024. And like having your identity just be stuck in the pure trying to attain that hockey stick growth, that we always talk about in practice management, but really having the time freedom to be present and structure my work life so that it supports my personal life rather than overtakes it is how I know that I'm being successful.
I'm sure that resonates with a lot of the folks listening today. I think this is finally an idea whose time has come. Back when I was running my coaching and consulting company, I was interviewed on that question a ton. And my answer, which one of my old clients just reminded me of about a week ago, she posted about this, and I haven't talked to her in 10 years. And she said, my coach, Lara, used to say the way she defined success was making sure, one of the KPIs for that. So was making sure that I put a healthy home cooked meal on the table by 6 p.m. 5 days a week. And it was like, that's so specific or whatever. But what I knew is that one of my definition of success is creating a family that when they grow up, they want to be around me. They want to come back and we enjoy each other. And the way I'm going to, know to do that, like I will have instilled some values, I will have created some relationships, whatever all that is. Well, one of the ways to do that was treating dinner like church. And it was sacred. And, again, putting healthy food in, having these conversations. So just like you, I kind of had the business growth, which was a huge piece of my life. And I was very dedicated to and very ambitious. But also remembering the whole reason that we're doing this was so that I can have these incredible relationships with my family and take really good care of them. So I love that you shared that. And God, we have so much in common. So that's cool. And I think,
I could do this twice as long. Right? I just love chatting with you. It's fun.
Yeah. It's so good. And I think it really resonates for people today because like I'm seeing more and more advisors talking about that this is what I'm doing. I want to have some ways to grow my business. I want to have some ways to, serve my clients really well, but I want to remember that all of this has to work in a way so that I can still enjoy my life, the life that I'm doing all this for. So very cool stuff.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, Johnny, thank you so much for being my guest today. It was a pleasure to have you. And what can we do to send people your way? How can they find out more about you?
Easiest way to find us is 3crownsmarketing.com. Spell out the 3. It is not a digit, but 3crownsmarketing.com. That's the best way to find us. Find us on LinkedIn or our website. And we would love to chat with you, even if you just want to talk some strategy, vet some other ideas. Always happy to do that. So thank you, Laura.
Thanks for being here. We'll make sure we link those resources in our show notes. Guys, thanks so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fast Podcast with Lara Galloway. Questions or comments about the show? We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at info@whiteglove.com. Also, be sure to check out the show notes to find any resources we may have mentioned. As always, don't forget to hit that follow button so you'll never miss an episode. And once again, thank you for joining us on the Fast Podcast.